This would be Equisetum telematia. So this is, oh look, it does have male cones. I think that this is Equisetum telematia.
Doesn't sound familiar for local species.
What, our vents? Telematia grows here. Yeah, that's what I think. So this is horsetail. I think it's Equisetum telematia because it's got the largest diameter and it has 20 to 40 grooves surrounding it. But I don't know if you ever play with horsetails, but they're just fun to pop because they come out of these joints really neatly, and when you're doing kids walks, it's a lot of fun. I'm doing a kids walk at 4 o'clock, so probably we'll get some horsetail. And that feeling is silica.
Is that the same thing as when without all the hairs on them, there's grass? Like it just has that without hairs?
There's many of them that don't have these branches. They're not hairs though. The plant is pretty unhairy. So this is horsetail, Equisetum, I think it's telematia, subspecies coolii, so which is just fun to say, subspecies coolii. So horsetail has a storied history for kidney problems. And, well, what do you use it for? There's audience participation. Anybody horsetail? Washing his toilet. Hair, skin, and nail. So silica-rich parts of our body.
Fertilizer.
Fertilizer. How do you use it as a fertilizer?
I just make it like a strong infusion and spray it on.
Like that?
Like that.
Wow.
It's awesome.
So, can I have somebody, there's some water over there, somebody can fill my cup up? Thank you very much. So horsetail is a little interesting. So it's Equisetum, equi as in horse, setum as in tail. And it's just a little horsetail-y, I guess. It's an old school plant. It was around way before insects. So basically during the dinosaur era, you had these spore-producing plants. So these make spores, not seeds. They're non-insect pollinated, they're wind pollinated. And before the angiosperms, the flowering plants took over, ferns and horsetails and club mosses were the main plants on the planet, as it looks like historical evidence. They are also what you pump into your car if you use petrol, right? Because a lot of these things have broken down. They're basically at vast forests, hundreds of millions of years ago. Thank you very much. And as they broke down, they become the carbon in the ground that's become petroleum. So you could think about that in some weird, twisted way whenever you fill up your car tank, that it's horsetails. So they're not edible to us. One of the reasons some people feel like dinosaurs had to get bigger is that so many things were low nutritional value, and that makes no sense thinking about that even for a second. So I'll just get off that tract. So yes, there are. So these things, some of these make separate male and female plants. Well, they make separate male and female structures from the same plant, and some of them have just one structure, vegetative. So, horsetail is famous for hair, skin, and nails. And I never quite understood it, and I'm still trying. There's lots of plants I just try to figure out. So if you're trying to figure stuff out, I've been practicing about 30 years, and I just kind of question a lot of it. The reason people say we use it, remember if you've taken Matt Wood's Doctrine of Signatures, sometimes Doctrine of Signatures to me are just memorization techniques, right? So it looks like this, so it's good for this. So people, the next generation pre-writing, memorize that. So, it's very rich in silica. You can feel the roughness to it are silica crystals. So I don't know if everybody's felt it, but you should feel some of these. These are native. They're a little bit weedy, but native as well. And so the idea is that the calcium-rich parts of our body, like nails, need silica, which gets converted to calcium. So basically there's a silica-calcium conversion. Current science doesn't support it quite in that way, because it looks like silica is large, and when we ingest it, that the silica basically passes it through in our stools. That may or may not be, but it doesn't mean that as it passes through our intestinal tract, it doesn't start an internal reaction that might help build those things. So remember that we say things simply because it's great to remember, like this is rich in silica, so it's good for your nails, but it could be that it's good for our nails, if it in fact is good for our nails, from different mechanisms, but that's the memorization. Does that make sense? So if there's anything I want to promote, it would be critical thinking in herbal medicine, because often the literature is totally doofus, right? I mean, it's just Pollyanna, wish it would happen, cures everything, right? And it's just not that way. Plants are very beautiful. This one is very beautiful. Are very interesting organisms with a lot of complex chemistry. And what you're going to do is you're going to take this complex chemistry and you're going to add it to your complex chemistry, and something's going to happen. So just because clearly I'm not coming from a spiritual background with herbal medicine. I'm not. I'm not reductionistic. I don't think that we can just take silica and use it. But definitely I'm looking for, when I think about it, what is it? Why do plants work? Well, plants work. Raspberry has tannins, and rose hips have vitamin C, some, and alders have whatever chemicals they have in them, these plants here. And you put them in them, and then, so when you're treating people, there's two things you have to consider from my point of view. You have to understand pathophysiology, which means you have to understand physiology. It is the language of modern humans. It's my language as well. So when somebody says they have bronchitis, it's useful to know that that might mean an inflammation of the bronchi. And so now you have inflammation potentially, but you also just might have constriction, very different. So when you're treating people, part of it is pathophysiology. What is wrong with them from a modern medical perspective? And the second part of it is constitution. So if somebody has trouble with hair, skin, or nails, right, partly it could be a silica deficiency, but it's often not. So I mean, you have to think, what is the pathology, what is the problem in them, and who are they? And when I give them this, is this chemistry going to alter their chemistry in a positive manner, right? So basically, when you give people plant medicines, what you should be thinking of is, right, you're giving, instead of like going off, and I mean, you could do it any way you like. But for me, I'm thinking, what does this plant do? Why might it do it? What's its kind of makeup? What's it been used for historically? And what am I trying to do to this person? I mean, it's hard for me to describe it, but really get to know your physiology. I would suggest the textbook by Silverthorne. I think that her textbook is the best physiology textbook. You can buy like the last edition, which is much cheaper. Textbooks are like 120 bucks each. So buy I think it's the 4th edition of Silverthorne, and just read it. Also, there's a lot of great animations on YouTube of physiology. And so just, go look up cardiovascular system, and there's some really good ones. I like the animations better than the teaching ones. They often don't look good online. But you can learn a lot. And the better you understand physiology, the more what you're doing to them makes sense. And then you have to think constitutionally. And for me, I use Ayurveda because I like to talk in an Indian accent, right? So it's like that. But I do. So I think, all right, this person has bronchitis, but they're very vata, and so thin and dry, and so no matter what, I'm going to give them a mucilage. This person is very pitta, so I have to also maybe add an anti-inflammatory. This person is very kapha with bronchitis, and so I have to add some warming, moving herbs, along with the other plants. So I just think it's a good way to come about like treating people. There is a hand up somewhere. Yes.
Do you use Horsetail in any way?
Are you trying to bring me back on course? What do you study with Howie? And you're always bringing him back on course. So, but instead I'll go on to another ramble just to spite you. Thank you. So I just started using Horsetail because the literature made no sense to me. But I think that it is helpful in a few ways through other mechanisms. I'm not really sure if it builds up the whole silica thing, but I have been using it for urinary tract disruptions, where I think that the urinary tract system has deficiencies and you are trying to build it up, and just a simple diuretic. So if, I don't know, somebody pees a lot and it seems like their bladder is just weaker, like for some reason, like they have to urinate with just small amounts of urine flowing into their bladder. It's not so much like a stretch receptor sensitivity maybe. I just feel like structurally there's some weakness to the urinary tract. For whatever reason I think that is. And then that's one time that I give Horsetail. I never use it in tincture. I think it makes a very bland tincture. And if you make a tea out of it, decoctions work much better. which is basically getting a bunch of it and just cook it in water for 10 or 15 minutes at a medium to high simmer until it tastes horsetail-y. If you make a good tincture, it should taste a little bit like the plant. That's how you know you don't have a good tincture, if it just tastes like alcohol, right? So many plants, though, you can double or triple macerate for a good tincture. Like red clover, mediocre tincture, but if you double or triple macerate it, you take that fluid, put more clover in, press it, take that fluid, put more clover in, and press it, then you start to get it. That's called the double or triple maceration. So I'm starting to use it, and I'm starting to get an understanding, and I've just read a lot more about it that's giving me insights, and so I'll see what it doesn't seem like it does any harm, so it's easy to use that way. I used the whole above ground part, and I used the vegetative structures, not the reproductive structures. So if you know your different horsetails, I use vegetative, not the white reproductive part that comes out earlier in spring. Yes?
I was going to ask if you use the stem as well.
Yes, I used this plant. Chemically, everything above the ground is pretty simple. If you just taste them, it all tastes the same, which is not always the best way to test plants, but it's not bad. Yes?
Have you ever done a vinegar extraction?
Yeah, I haven't, but some people do use it a lot. A lot of times people use vinegar extractions and other things for remineralization, and I tend to try to get it in food, but I would probably, if I did that, I would probably use that and put it on salad or something else to increase mineral content through nutrition. But a lot of people talk about it as being vinegar soluble, and it looks good. Tastes good. It tastes like vinegar with something else. Yes?
Have you ever used the reproductive part as a food?
I've never used it. Have you?
Yes.
Does-
I've tried it. You can't eat too much of it. A little bit of it is okay.
So horsetail is a food?
Just the very young shoots.
Okay. And they're non-green, right? The reproductive structures are white. They don't photosynthesize. And so basically the reproductive structure, which is a sporophyte, comes up and makes spores and releases those spores. It's all the same plant. Then it dies back, and then it sends up the vegetative, and that photosynthesizes, and it brings that photosynthetic food back into the ground, for the rest of the year. That's how they do it. Not everyone does it that way, though. Yes?
Can you speak to don't harvest it after a certain age?
I don't know I'm still trying to figure out what I think about it. So around us, Equisetum arvens is the most common. And when its branches come out, I'm a little teacup, ready? No. No, I'm going to draw my, what was that? Horsetail spray.
Yeah, there you go.
Some people say when the branches, these are branches, they're not leaves, are down, it's an easier, a more digestible medicine. And by the time they're kind of straight out, that it's less, and it is more silicaceous, meaning it's rougher, but I don't really know how the medicine changes. Historically, though, some people used it when they're younger. But I haven't really played it. I'm really learning this plant, I guess is what I'm saying. Anybody else learning this plant? It seems useful.